So it's January 1st, 2021. I sit down for my morning cup of coffee. I hold it with two hands, tip my head down to breathe it in, its wafting aroma, and I take a sip. But something strange happens. Or better said, doesn't happen. I curiously pull the cup back to my nose, take a deep sniff. Nothing. Another sip. This time I'm swishing the coffee all around my mouth. Zippo. No need to wait 48 more hours for that COVID test result. Happy New Year, friends. Now, if you've never experienced something like this, I have to tell you that this feeling is incredibly strange. I knew my nose and mouth were intact. I could physically sniff and swallow, but I could not smell or taste. And there was this unusual energy around it, too. I found myself shoving my nose into anything that had an odor, good or bad. Nada. My kids found my condition amusing. They quickly developed a game that involved their placing a mystery food in my mouth while my eyes were closed, and then I had to guess what it was. But habanero pepper? No different than English cucumber. Raw onion? Exactly the same thing as skinless apple. Lemon? Could have been a clementine. My smell and taste were gone, and I was truly flying blind. And after 2 weeks, the novelty of my condition wore off, and the loss started to wear on me. 2 weeks later, an actual numbness set in, but not related just to those two missing senses. It was a dulling of everything, an all-consuming apathy. By the end of February, with nothing new on the horizon other than my now blunted sensibilities, I found myself stuck in an attitude of, I guess this is just how it's going to be. If you've navigated life over these past 19 months, you likely know this attitude too. So many of those structures we always relied on to guide our lives were gone. Office commutes, chats after bumping into someone unexpectedly, handshakes, hugs. The days blurred into weeks, weeks blurred into months. Had we showered? Did it matter? Despite the albeit glorious but brief reprieve this past summer, Delta has sunk many of us right back down into that now familiar droning of, I guess that's just how it's going to be. Organizational psychologist Adam Grant named this phenomenon in his popular article, "There's a name for that blah you're feeling. It's called languishing." He wrote the following: "At first, I didn't recognize the symptoms we all had in common. Friends mentioned they were having trouble concentrating. A family member was staying up late to watch National Treasure again, even though she knows the movie by heart. We just felt somewhat joyless, aimless. Turns out there's a name for that, languishing, a sense of stagnation and emptiness. It feels as if you're muddling through your days, looking at your life through a foggy windshield. And it might be the dominant emotion of 2021. But here's the thing. Languishing isn't a condition reserved for pandemics. Turns out it's a part of the human condition all the time. We know languishing. We see it. We feel it. Some of us occasionally, some of us more regularly. When the fixtures of our lives, large or small, start to lose their color, feel different, fall away. And it doesn't happen all at once either. Grant maintains, you don't catch yourself slipping slowly into solitude. You're indifferent to your indifference. Relationships that were once filled with love and light seem to lose their flame. Work that once brought meaning and inspiration feels empty, heavy. Friendships and experiences that bore excitement and fulfillment instead seem ordinary and aimless. Pasta for dinner? Again? All right. We become resigned to life as it has become, which also now feels like this is just how it's going to be forever. And it isn't a modern phenomena. It's the central idea in the traditional Torah portion that we read today, when Abraham banishes Hagar and Ishmael. Hagar was Sarah's servant. Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn child with Hagar. Abraham gives Hagar a little food and a pouch of water, and he sends them on their way. They wander the wilderness until the pouch is gone. Hagar knows how things are going to play out. She accepts their fate, sets Ishmael down under a bush, and sits down at a distance, and she weeps. She's languishing. This is just how it's going to be. There's nothing I can do to change it. But the story isn't over. An angel appears who tells Hagar to lift up the boy and take him by the hand. When the two are reunited, the Torah reads as follows: Vayifkach Elohim et eineha. God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well of water. Commentators are quick to point out that God doesn't magically create a new well that wasn't there before, but rather God opens Hagar's eyes so she can see a well that's been there all along, a well she had been blinded to by her own languished sensibilities. And whether it was for Hagar or if it's for us today, we humans simply, consciously or unconsciously, tend to accept the status quo. We make assumptions, and we underestimate our own agency in our lives to make changes, even those as simple as seeing something a new way or doing something we always do differently. Speaking of that, so I joined a bunch of these support groups for people with my condition, figuring that misery loves company. It wasn't a great time for me. And in one of those groups, someone posted an article about olfactory training. Now, this doesn't work for everyone, but I was like, I'm gonna try it. What do I have to lose? Here's how it works. A number of times a day, for many days in a row, you take one of 4 essential oils. I chose lemon. You hold it to your nose and you sniff for a few minutes in this concentrated way. But here's the hard part, or the interesting part. While you're sniffing, you're supposed to think about, in your mind, remember, imagine the smell, in my case, of a lemon. Now, don't forget, you can't go smell a lemon as a reference point because you cannot smell. So it's all in your head. And the theory goes that over time, something happens when the physical act of sniffing, and then the thinking about the item that you are trying to smell, somehow rebuild the neural and olfactory pathways that were severed. And this allows you to actually smell again. It's amazing. It's not just the sniffing, but it's the active thinking and imagining over and over again that enables a new path to open. Think about that. Isn't that incredible? That something as seemingly simple as the content of our thoughts, the story we tell ourselves in a given situation, has the power not just to heal, but actually to transform our lives. Judaism has always placed an important value on this kind of thinking, remembering, reimagining, because it understands that ultimately the choice between living a languished life and a fulfilled one is first and foremost set in our perceptions. And to this end, I'd like to suggest that the High Holy Days as an institution, in and of themselves, are designed to serve as both the prophylactic treatment as well as the antidote to the "that's just how it's gonna be" condition, snapping us out of our regulated, languished realities with the shofar blast, beckoning that we can, in fact, renew ourselves, our relationships, our world. The Hasidic master, Rabbi Kalonymus Kalman Shapira, wrote the following amidst the despair of the Warsaw Ghetto on Rosh Hashanah in 1941. He writes, "The time for teshuvah is Rosh Hashanah, the anniversary of the creation of the world. We return to who we are meant to be, but have not yet become. This is because teshuvah is a kind of creativity. We return to growth and possibility that has lain dormant within us and not yet flourished, much as a sculpture lies hidden within a brute block of stone. But know this, the High Holy Days won't sugarcoat anything for us. From today through Yom Kippur, we will be reminded over and over again that nothing is promised about how life will unfold. There are no guarantees. But so too will we be invited to remember that right now, here, this moment, we are here. We are alive. And every moment in that reality holds the possibility for renewal, rebirth, the creation of something new. That apology we've withheld because we've told ourselves that we weren't really the instigator in the argument, we can decide to be the bigger person and say, "I'm sorry," first. We can. That grudge we've been holding on to, we have the power within us to choose to let it go. We can actually make something new for dinner. Through the work of teshuvah, the High Holy Days' invitation to return to ourselves and the best of who we can be, Judaism reminds us that the status quo does not have to be a life sentence. We might not be able to choose the things that happen to us, but we can, as Viktor Frankl reminds us, always choose how to respond. And lest we forget, not responding, not choosing, well, this is a choice. Accepting this is just how it's going to be is a choice. We don't have to remain indifferent to our indifference. We can actually wake up. We can choose a different narrative to help us reframe. We can make the old new again. When we returned the Torah to the Ark a few minutes ago, we heard the final words of Eitz Chaim Hi, Chadesh Yameinu, renew our days, kekedem, as in days of old. But kedem can mean something else too. Rabbi Robert Scheinberg points out that kedem is also where Adam and Eve were sent when they were banished from the Garden of Eden. Mikedem Lagan Eden, east of Eden. And it was only once they were there that real human life truly began, that their sensibilities set in. With this reframing, we see that we're not asking for a return to the paradise of before, a silly longing for the so-called good old days, but rather, we're yearning to return to the point where we begin to live again. As the sun set last night, marking the dawning of the first day of the new year of 5782, I sat down at my office desk. An hour or so before services began, I took out a bag of lemon slices. I bring them from home every year, and I do this as a little lemon juice helps ensure my voice stays strong and clear. I brought one up to my face. It's cold, juicy flesh. It dabbed the tip of my nose. I breathed in its sweet citrus scent. And then as I bit into it, my lips instinctually pursed with its sour tang. You know this feeling. And my eyes closed and my chin tilted down and to the side. Who knew a lemon could be so delicious? The sweet taste of something new, again. Shana Tova U'Mtuka. May it be a good and sweet year for us all.